Awesome.
One second here. Pull this up here. All right. Well, welcome everyone to the Statewide Children's Committee meeting. My name's Kirby Fye. I'm with the department. Just a few things to go over before we get started. As you know, we're continuing to meet virtually via MS Teams per the Open Meetings Act. The committee decided it was just the best option for us to continue this way, especially during the pandemic, just to keep everyone safe. Also, with that being said, we will be recording the meeting, and this will be posted to the department website within the next day or two. So please make sure your phones or your computers are muted if you're not presenting or speaking, just to prevent any feedback from coming through. Please also state your name if you're asking a question or commenting on something, as it's helpful when capturing the minutes. I'm going to go ahead and take attendance. I'm going to start with the individuals who have joined via computer because I could see their names, and then I'll go to the individuals who have called in. So like I said, my name is Kirby Fye. We have Albert Richardson, Amy Holland, Amy Irvin, Avis Easley, Benita Hayes, Brenda Donaldson, Elizabeth Reeve, Jerry Moore, Jessica Mullins, Kathy Rogers, our presenter today, who so graciously accepted to present. Thank you, Kathy. Lindsay Blevins, Melissa Binkley, Melissa McGee, Amy Olson, Ricky Harris, Steve Petty.
Here.
And we have quite a few on here. Hi, Steve. Sydney, what's your last name, Sydney?
It's Hoiberg.
Can you spell that for me?
It's Hoiberg.
Thank you. All right, and then I know on the line we have Alicia Smith Knight, and hold on, there we go. And we have two other callers. If the last four digits are 1,000, can you please state your name, please?
Yes, Melissa Birdwell.
Hi, Melissa.
Hey.
And the other caller with ending in 4449.
That's Hunter Hancock with Aim High, Tennessee.
Hi, Hunter. Did I miss anyone? Did anyone join the call during attendance and I didn't get your name? All right. Okay, Ricky, I'm going to hand it. Oh, wait, it looks like we have one more caller. Who just joined the call? Hello?
Oh, hello?
Hi. Oh, what's your name, please?
Oh, sorry. This is Elisa Laporte with NAMI, Tennessee.
Hi, Elisa.
Hi.
Okay, we can go ahead and get started, Ricky.
Thank you so much, Kirby. Welcome, everybody. I'm excited. We're going to cover a couple of things on our agenda today, but our first presentation is from Ms. Kathy Rogers, who I lovingly refer to as Kroger's because her email is krogers. But anyways, Kathy's going to talk to us about the Teen Connect Parenting Group program that we have at Tennessee Voices. And it was born out of an effort of work with DCS and the Annie E. Casey Foundation. So I'm excited for her to share the work. She's been an integral part of growing this program, and I'm going to turn it over to you, Kathy.
Thank you so much, Ricky. And I'm beginning to share my screen. And so are people able to see that now?
Yes.
Great. I'm here to share about the Teen Connect Parenting Group. And this is a very exciting group for me. As Ricky will share with you, Annie E. Casey trained us in presenting this group. And in presenting the group, they sent us to New York in less than optimal conditions, but we learned a lot. So let me go through this. Teen Connect really is for parents, or was developed for parents who are birth parents of adolescents who may have really significant behavior problems, which can include aggression, conduct issues, substance abuse, and other serious mental health concerns. One of the values of this group, to me, is that we just deal with the parents, but the outcomes really affect the children. The group is 10 sessions of 1.5 hours. We have been able to successfully do this group live or virtually, and the impact seems to be the same in terms of the positive outcomes it has, whether it is virtual or live. This group process uses both discussion and role play. So we say, what does that mean? Every group uses that. Well, this is a little different because it is really designed to shift parents' perceptions of their children and to understand their teens' behavior. Perception is everything. And of course, this is an evidence-based, trauma-informed, attachment-based group. So it's basically, we've used it for teenagers, but you can use it for parents with children ages 18. And most importantly, our experience has been using it with parents who are at risk of custody or non-custodial DCS cases. All of the referrals so far have come from DCS. Some of the children of the parents are in custody, but most have been non-custodial. And that's going to be significant when we look in a little bit later on the outcomes and what that means for the youth. So I said Teen Connect was 10 groups. We kick off with all behavior has meaning. Then we go into looking at attachment is for life. And we take the parents back to what it was like to parent the child as an infant, as a toddler, and now as a teen. The next session, and this is a lively session, is conflict is part of attachment. And we act out that conflict. And I'll tell you a little bit more about those role plays in a second. Of course, we focus a lot on empathy. And this is a really hard section for the parents to get hold of, to understand the difference between sympathy and empathy. But they finally get it and understand how critical it is to understand the position that their child may be experiencing. The next class is and we talk about it's their job to launch their teenager successfully. And in this session, we take the parents back to what their teen years were like, how they responded, and how they would like their children to respond. This is sometimes a painful session for the parents when they begin to get in touch with what their own parenting experiences is like. We move into balancing needs, stressing, that the parents have needs that they need to address and take care of themselves, as well as their children's needs, and how can they balance all of that? Of course, we bloom into growth and change. What that means in terms of their children growing and the changes they're seeing dynamically in their family. We look at celebrating attachments, stressing that everyone needs attachment their entire life. And then we look at, you're going to take 2 steps forward, 1 step back, but you're going to be making progress. And of course, finally is closing and integration. And does anybody have any questions over this process or any that we've covered so far? Okay. I said we use role plays. And role plays are very different in Teen Connect from your typical role play. They are scripted, and they are scripted in a series of 3. We do 1 role play, same situation, where there's yelling, slamming of books, slamming of doors. And at the end of that role play, we ask the parents, what was the youth thinking and feeling? And what was the parent thinking and feeling? And was communication left open or closed in this role play? We do this throughout the whole process. The next role play, same situation, is quieter but blaming. The parent is blaming the child is blaming the parent. We process it the same way, ending with, okay, was communication opened or closed? The next role play, same situation, focusing on keeping the door open. We stress that the situation with their child isn't going to be perfect at all. We share our not so proud parenting moments, and that we're not trying to get them perfect or to react the same way every time, but we're trying to expand their perceptions of the needs, both for their youth and themselves, and how they can keep the communication open. That processing is key to this whole group. Parents, we start out doing the role playing, and as parents get more and more comfortable with us, we move into the parents doing the scripted role plays. And parents say, I see myself in this. That is the way it is in my house. Just last night, I had the yelling, the slamming of doors and books. We stress this is not, this happens, you do this, and then everything will be okay. It is a process of communication and leaving doors open. So, parents in the end say to us, this is better than other groups that I have been a part of. The evaluation asked them a question. We shared lots of ideas and shared information, additional written information after each group. Did you use that? And they more say they frequently apply the ideas we discussed. The discussion is healthy in the groups. I want to share one thing. In the very first group we did one of the scenarios. And of course, as part of that, we said, what do you as a parent think of that and what might you do? And one parent says, I would beat them. I would just beat them. And we thought, oh my gosh, what are we going to do? We continued to process the group and the role plays, and that parent throughout the process in about group 3 or 4 said, I'm told to beat them, not that I would beat them, but people tell me to beat them. We thought, oh, okay, we're making progress. At the end of this group process, this parent said that this is their statement. I have learned to communicate with my child in a calm manner without violence. The rest of that story was, I grew up in a family where I was beat. You accepted my experience, and that enabled me to grow. Thank you. Those weren't the exact words, but that was the essence of it. Another parent said, we have a big positive change in our household. To me, this is phenomenal. And the reason why it's phenomenal is we never work with the teen. We only work with the parent. So that to me is so significant. So this has been used internationally, this group process, and in the United States. And the major findings of 15 years of research show that there is actual decrease in caregiver strain. This next one to me is so significant that there is decrease in both youth externalizing behaviors and internalizing problems. Why is that so significant? We never work with the youth. There is an increase in family satisfaction, and on an average, 86% of the parents who enter the group complete the group. That is a very high completion average. The Annie Casey, over the last 5 years, contracted with independent researchers to develop an implementation and evaluation of this process, and their outcomes were very similar to the international studies I just shared. So we looked at just the last year, and in the last year, 22 parents completed Connect groups. We had 4 groups. Last year was very interesting because of COVID. We had to shift from live to virtual. We prefer live, but virtual can do it. It took a minute in consultation to really make sure we were connecting with the parents virtually. We were addressing all of the challenges that parents had to connect virtually. And we found that most parents use their phones. And so we had to become very skilled at providing their participatory approach via their phone, whatever type program they may have. Of those 22 parents, 18 families were non-custodial, with 89% of those children not entering custody. I think that's significant. Now, we looked at, some of them still had an open case, but they did not enter custody, and most of their cases were closed. 4 of the families had children already in custody, and one had their child returned and case closed. So that was 25%. So what I gather from this is that this process is much more successful with families where their children are not in custody but are at risk of custody. You can reach your own conclusions on that, but does anyone want to have questions about that? Okay.
Kathy, I'm going to add just a really quick comment or two. One of the things when Annie Casey Foundation and DCS came to us, they said the reason that they were doing this work in our state was because our group of older youth, or what they might call older teens, were the group that were having the most difficulty. So in a number of ways. One, involvement with DCS, with older teens, parents wanting to give up custody of the older teens, and then getting foster or adoption options for the older teens. And so there were lots of concern around the older teens in our state not getting all the services wrapped around them they need to be successful, inclusive of the custodial families, non-custodial families. By that I mean foster and adoptive when I say custodial families. And we were just looking for solutions. And so one of the unique things, and the reason they decided to partner with us, is we said, we believe that we can do this program, but we needed it to be delivered. We needed the training to be delivered to parents by FSSs, so family support specialists, people who had lived experience with their own youth, and some of our folks even having DCS involvement, system involvement, understanding that piece of the work as well. And so they really liked that idea, and that's how we ended up kind of creating this longer term program and partnership after the pilot, because we saw such good engagement, successful engagement in the program when the FSSs were leading the charge and the training. So a huge kudos to Kathy and her team of FSSs who do this work, because they're really the secret sauce, I think, to getting the parent engagement on this particular piece. These are cases that are at risk of losing their children. They are cases of, extreme complexity, and they've had a lot of good success. So with that, I'll stop, and if you guys have questions or comments, I'm sure Kathy would be happy to answer, and I'll help if I can, Kathy.
Thank you, Ricky.
Hey, this is Alicia. It sounds like a great program. Ricky, do you know, or Kathy, do you know if it's slated to be evaluated for the Family First Clearinghouse?
To my knowledge, it is not on the list of things in our state to be put up toward the clearinghouse, but Kathy, you want to talk some about the evidence-based work that was done prior to the clearinghouse becoming part of our state's plan?
Yes, this was extensively studied, and I sent to Kirby several slides that she said she would share after this presentation, because they're all technical on studies, and that will be shared with you, Alicia, so you will have that. But there have been extensive studies done on this work, but it is not, as Ricky said, as part of the clearinghouse. Right now, we are only able to do this with families referred to us from DCS, because it is a contract with DCS. We are working to get more of our staff trained so we can spread this in other programs. Annie E. Casey supported this for 5 years, but now I think Annie E. Casey is going to change their focus somewhat. But the people who have this program are continuing and have made a commitment to get 3 more of our staff trained. And we are working on getting 2 of our trainers certified to provide training in Tennessee, so people don't have to go out of state. But if they want to be trained in this process, that can be provided. Everything's a process, and COVID just threw everything back. I mean, we were marching forward so strongly, and now we're having to adapt how we do everything. But we'll get there. I just want to say, I have done tons of groups in my life. This one I absolutely love. Attachment is so key to the development of all individuals. It fits in so well with building strong brains. It fits in so well with what we're trying to accomplish and to ensure that teens and young children have safe, secure, and stable homes. Anecdotally, I asked the person who's over Teen Connect with DCS what they thought, and she said, with your group, the Teen Connect group, parents stay the whole time. They talk, they engage, they really apply themselves. Other groups, they don't talk, they just sit there and get through it. She said, but with your group, Teen Connect, it's just the way she was talking, they want more. They think it's too short. They want you to keep going. So that's just an anecdotal difference of what DCS is seeing.
Any other questions or comments for Kathy? Okay. Well, thank you, Kathy, so much for stepping in today and telling us about Teen Connect. I appreciate it.
Thank you. And if it's okay with the group, I'm going to hop off. But thank you very much for the opportunity. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Kathy.
Thank you, Kathy.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Before we transition to some discussion around needs assessment, Kirby has a couple of announcements / updates for us regarding needs assessment. Kirby?
Hi, thank you. And like Kathy said, I do have a bunch of documents that she sent me, and I was going to share them in the original email, but I know you all have so many attachments to begin with when you get those emails. So I will be sure to send you all of those right after the meeting, so you'll have them on hand. So just a quick update. It's a good update, I think, concerning the needs assessment. So as you know, or as you may or may not know, if you're not familiar with the needs assessment process and you're on the call, typically we would have the statewide children's committee would come together and look at needs across the state and identify 2 mental health needs and 2 substance abuse needs as it pertains to children. So this past legislative season, when we had our legislative proposal process that the regional planning and policy councils engage in, Region 2 had suggested that we increase the amount of needs that we submit every year for the needs assessment summary. Commissioner Williams took a look at that. It wasn't something that needed to be changed legislatively. It's something that could be done in-house. And Commissioner Williams took a look at that, and she liked the idea. But she didn't want to force anyone to have to put in more needs if they didn't feel comfortable doing that. So what she has agreed to is that each of the 7 regional planning and policy councils, as well as the statewide children's committee, the statewide adult committee, and the consumer advisory board. Those are all the entities that come together to complete the needs assessment summary. They will have the option to submit anywhere from 2 to 6 needs. We just need to make sure that they have equal representation. So if you have 2, 1 must be mental health, 1 must be substance abuse, so on. So yeah, so that's pretty exciting. The data piece remains the same. I will say that Typically, we have our statewide planning and policy council meeting every December, and at that meeting, typically Elena Alejandro or someone from her office, she's with the Office of Research, will present on a needs assessment data report, and it could look at it. The problem with it is that it can't always be from that fiscal year because, as you know, it takes time to gather that data to see what needs are identified and what we're looking at. So what she has decided to do instead is at this presentation, her and her team are putting together a new resource packet for you all based on what she's seeing, like requests that she's seeing and suggestions that she's seeing when putting together the needs assessment. So it's also going to be inclusive of some COVID-19 data as well. So I'm hopeful that that will help you all as well. I know that that's usually the most difficult piece. You can identify those needs without a problem. It's just a matter of getting the data to support those needs that's relevant and, within the last 2 or 3 years, which is sometimes not always possible. So look forward to that presentation. I'm excited about it. And it's something that she's working really hard on to put together. So with that being said, now I can hand it over back to you. Anywhere from 2 to 6 needs for the needs assessment summary.
Well, I think that is great news. And so please express back to her that how grateful we are, because I know sometimes we do feel a little strapped to only put 2 in when we feel like there's a place for more. So that's exciting. I think the best thing for us to do, since we're just getting an early start on the discussion, is to talk a little bit generally about some of the things that have changed in the environment based on COVID, based on the last 18 months and all the things that are happening. I'm certainly, like you all, keeping up with data in the news, so some national data, watching some Tennessee specific data, and looking at the impact on children. And I thought maybe for today, in our short discussion around just kind of getting needs assessment talk going, it might be a good place to start to just mention, if you all haven't seen the call from the American Academy of Pediatrics and the Hospital Association, the sort of call for state of emergency around children's mental health. They really believe there's a crisis, as I do, in terms of children's mental health in our country, and that there's a lot of work that needs to be done. And so maybe starting there, just to kind of hear from you all, have you seen this information? How did it hit you? Why did it resonate with you if it did? And what are you seeing that we should be kind of forming thoughts around as we go into the needs assessment piece of our year coming soon? So I'll open that up for discussion.
Okay, I think something that's really standing out to me as I'm thinking about what this looks like, particularly for very young children, is that kids that don't have language to show that they're struggling use their behavior to show that they're struggling and get their needs met. And I think that's kind of a complicated issue, particularly here, because we have lost a lot of childcare spots already. There is high competition for positions for, parents in childcare, and so it becomes this big issue where if a child is misbehaving, and it might be an issue related to mental health rather than just straight behavior, and a place has a lot of children on the list behind them, they might be more likely to get dismissed. And that's not just for young children, but for, elementary and up as well, but young children in particular. And if a child gets dismissed from a placement, that has pretty significant ripple effects for parents and communities. So I think that's something that's really standing out to me, is how do we message that behavior has meaning? You might be seeing some of these things if you're working with young children that have, been through this crisis like the rest of us.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. Other thoughts? Megan, I see your hand.
Decided to raise my hand today. From a crisis standpoint, the children that we are seeing are progressively more and more and more mentally ill. That community services have been absolutely exhausted. They already have intensive in-home services. They already have intensive outpatient therapy, and they are not progressing and getting what they need. So you're seeing more and more children go to the psychiatric hospital, and more children competing for beds at psychiatric hospitals. The children that are most marginalized in that process are children who have a diagnosis of autism, intellectual disability, complex medical needs, or a fun one with Delta was they are COVID positive, asymptomatic in some cases, but COVID positive, and we have to house them at a medical facility or a home for 10 days post positive exam before we can get them inpatient psychiatric care. The other biggest barriers I put in the chat was children who have no insurance or underinsured. So I think in the quarterly meeting, not this one, but maybe the last one or the one before, we talked about safety net. I'd love to see safety net expanded to cover 14 days of inpatient care per calendar year. Is the good majority of the kids that initially qualify for safety net are going to qualify for state Medicaid. The other really cool thing that I saw this year, West Tennessee Health here sent me a link to participate in a webinar about sensory rooms that they have built at emergency rooms in Dallas that have greatly decreased length of stay, decreased child acuity, to where either those children have been able to stabilize and don't need inpatient care by the time 2 or 3 days are past. The other piece was then when a kid does still need hospitalization, it provides a very calming environment. Believe it's a product by Philips, but investment in that technology, the data that they had from their hospital was just phenomenal in terms of the impact it had on children.
I'm sorry, what kind of room did you say? Did you say sensory?
Welcome to the year of the pandemic. I'm talking with mute on. Yeah, I was expecting to get an academic presentation, but it was basically a sales pitch with a bunch of data to back it up. It is a projection room, so it has a standard, it has a comfortable bed in it. It has soothing sounds. It can alter lighting. It can have a forced projection. There's a portion that has like an interactive means of like coping and interaction, mindfulness, grounding. And they found that their pediatric patients that spent time in this room didn't have a need for soft restraint, IM sedation. They had less agitation, so they consumed less emergency room resources, and their mental health started to stabilize just from being in this interactive room. They have like this, it's like 0 ligature point projection system that the child has control of, that they can change it to the forest, and so soft green lighting. It's really cool. I'll grab the information and send it to Kirby to share.
Thank you.
That is very interesting. Thank you for sharing that. Other thoughts?
We're also seeing a greater need for day treatment and partial hospitalization programs. We had one open in Jackson in West Tennessee. Our Metro Memphis has several. We have 0, unless the school runs a day treatment or specialized program through their school system. And we've actually ended up referring quite a few children to that as a way to keep them in the community, but provide additional support that the school and mental health system can't. So expansion of partial hospitalization to rural areas would be fantastic.
Thank you. As we kind of move into this season of thinking about needs assessment, I would encourage you to use the handouts that Kirby sent along from our 2021 needs assessment summary. The Children's Committee summary is on the last page of the document labeled Final 2021 in a
Do you want
summary.
me to share it, Ricky?
Sure, that'd be great.
Okay.
And my encouragement was really just going to be start thinking about what's on this current needs assessment, what could be added now that we can add more. And here's the reason for my encouragement. I want to give an example of how this information is utilized and how I've experienced over the last, I don't know how many years now as the Children's Committee Chair, but also now in my role with the Policy and Planning Council. I have seen in multiple settings, one example happened yesterday where folks are encouraged to utilize the needs assessment to build, for instance, a proposal to the department. So right now the Tennessee Resiliency Project, AOF, is out, and in the Q&A call, it was encouraged by department staff that providers that intended to propose look at this children's needs assessment from Policy and Planning Council. So my encouragement to you is this information is utilized when shared. I have learned during my work with the department staff that this information is held very valuable to them. And it always re-engages and encourages me to make sure that we're getting everything out there that we feel needs to be said and stated so that the department staff can continue to look back into the needs assessment and make decisions about funding. And I see it threaded throughout, especially this last year of funding. And right now, like I said, the AOF for the Tennessee Resiliency Project, it's very clear that there's attention to children's needs in these areas that we've expressed. So maybe just a quick review for all of us is go back and look at the needs assessment from last year and let's build upon. And thank you, Megan and Melissa, for sharing those additional thoughts about how we can improve and increase our needs assessment response back to the department. Giving what we have here in front of us, any more comments or thoughts as to what we want to do in 2022 in our needs assessment?
This is Alicia. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
I'm sorry, I've got a few things going on here. But one thing that stood out to me on the declaration of the state of emergency is the need to address workforce challenges in children's mental health. I think we're seeing needs from outpatient care to inpatient care, everything in between. And that's not something that this group, I don't think, has ever really looked at least since I've been around, but that might be something that we want to consider.
Thank you, Alicia, and I could not agree more. I think now's the time to get the data and get it on paper in front of us in the needs assessment. The data is there, and we need to make sure it's shared. Does anyone want to comment on the workforce issues or any data that you've seen that you want to share that we can utilize in our assessment work?
Hey, Ricky.
Hey.
Hey, this is Steve Petty. I just want to mention that one of the things on my list to do today is to go back and look at the commissioner's budget hearing presentation that she did for the governor and the budget folks. That was on Monday. I didn't get a chance to see it. Monday had some computer issues, but in reviewing the documents, there was a lot of emphasis on workforce improvements. And so, like I said, I haven't heard the presentation or seen the details of it, but it was very encouraging because I know that folks have been mentioning this to the commissioner for a couple of years now, some of the workforce issues that we've been having. And I believe that that issue is being addressed by some of the other departments too. So you might not only go back and look at the mental health and substance abuse services presentation, but also check out TennCare and some of the other departments as well.
Great reminder, Steve. Thank you. Yes, there's a lot of good stuff there. So if you haven't seen or heard the presentation, definitely encourage you to check it out. I think that it was well received by the governor and his staff. The questions that came back from them were strong and gave me a sense that they understood the need. And I'm very encouraged by what I saw and heard in the budget hearing. Other thoughts?
Kirby, this is Hunter Hancock. I just wanted to comment that I was glad to see in the summary some things in there about establishing mental health screenings and services, expanding on those types of services, especially the school-based or services or tools available to school-based liaisons and counselors, and that focus on the 0 to 8 age range and how important that is, and that development of resiliency, for later on in life and those older children. So I was glad to see that. And that's one of the things that I would comment on is just the need to expand therapeutic services in schools, make sure that our resource linkage is good there, and because they spend so much time at school throughout their lives, it just makes sense that we would invest in expanding therapeutic services through the school system. So that's all I have.
Thank you. Any other thoughts or comments before we wrap up?
Yes, hi, this is Elisa with NAMI, Tennessee, and thank you for bringing up the American Academy of Pediatrics, sounding the alarm. And I definitely agree with all the discussion around the workforce needs and hospitalization, increased beds, et cetera. I would also like to mention, possibly the need for education for parents, how to recognize the signs and symptoms, because I think there are a lot of parents out there that don't think that their child could have a mental illness at such a young age, and we know that they can. So I just thought I'd throw that in.
Thank you.
I would just add on to what Elisa said. This is Alicia. I don't know if there's any way to get data on this from TSPN or others, but the number of kids who die by suicide who've never been seen in the system. I hear anecdotal stories about that, and that indicates to all of us that these are kids that were just never identified, and we really missed something there.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, I don't want to cut off discussions. If there are any other comments, just shout it out. But I do want to point your attention to the calendar for next year's meetings. Kirby has included that in the email about today's meeting. Make sure you get those on your calendar so that we can get a strong needs assessment put together and submitted when the time comes next year. And if there aren't any other comments, Kirby, are there any last minute things you need to let the group know before we close?
Nope, I think that's it. Typically, so our next meeting will be in February, and the discussion will be the needs assessment.
Awesome. All right, you guys, thank you so much for joining today. I appreciate you taking the time to discuss children's needs in our state, and I hope to see you all back in February to wrap up this discussion and put together a strong needs assessment